If you're looking to buy a small luxury crossover, you have tons of options. There's the BMW X3, the Lexus NX, the Audi Q5, the Mercedes GLC, and a ton of others that I could sit here and roll off. But one of the most interesting vehicles in the segment is this one right here. This is the newly updated 2026 Genesis GV70. Now, this model has been on the market for a few years. It's been an absolute hit for Genesis, representing over 35% of the South Korean luxury automaker's sales. And now it receives its first updates. We have some updates on the outside, we have some nice tech upgrades on the inside, and then we have the same engines under the hood. Today in this video, we're going to take the 2026 GV70 out on a first drive and find out whether or not it's still one of the best options in the luxury compact segment. Let's dive in. So we're gonna start our video with a walk around of the exterior, and honestly, the Genesis designers kind of got up during the presentation and told us we didn't really want to do that much to the exterior of this car, and I can kind of understand where they're coming from, because I do think that besides maybe the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, I think that this is the prettiest vehicle in its segment, and I really don't think there's much to compete with it. We do have a revised G Matrix crest grille. I think it's a really good looking grille. It's very bold, it's very dynamic, it's very Bentley-esque. We do have a different Genesis logo. It's a little bit flatter than the previous one. And then we have these updated multi-lens array. They're called MLA headlamps that are really gorgeous. You can see we have kind of these square modules, and then Genesis has kept that twin headlight design that they are so famous for. Now, 19-inch wheels are going to come standard. They are different 19-inch wheels than you previously got. These are the upgraded 21-inch wheels that are available. I think these are gorgeous. I liked the previous 21s, but I think these are actually even better. Love a good 5-spoke. Not the biggest fan of these little stripes that are on each wheels, but I could overlook that. You could definitely get these wheels refinished if you absolutely didn't like those. And then the side profile is mostly going to look the same. This is such a handsome vehicle. I absolutely love this interesting C-pillar design. I always compared it to something like a Porsche 928. I really just love how that looks. We do have some new exterior colors here. They have one called Ceres Blue, which is supposed to look like the dwarf planet that's between Mars and Jupiter. It really just kind of looks more like a gray to me, which is why we picked this red color to go with here. There are 10 exterior colors. Honestly, none of them are that interesting. I think the red is definitely the best color, the boldest one. The rest are all quite muted. Again, we have the twin lights here in the taillight, very similar to the previous GV70 with our model designation, Genesis spelled out. Everybody's doing this now from Lexus to Aston Martin. And then 4-wheel drive is going to be standard on this car. And then this is going to let us know that we do have the V6, which is the optional engine here on the GV70. Now, perhaps even more important than the gorgeous exterior on the GV70 is this interior. So we are driving the Sport Prestige. It's the most expensive trim level, which means we're going to have the nicest interior. So keep in mind, a lot of this is only available on the top trim, but we have these gorgeous red Napa leather seats, Napa leather on the top trim, leatherette on the base trim, and then a lot of the middle trims just kind of get a regular leather that's not quite as nice as this. There are other colors available on this top trim level. There's actually 4 available. So the red is kind of the boldest, but you can get black, a blue, or like a beige, and they have orange accents. So they have like orange stitchings, and they actually get matching orange seat belts as well. Might be a little bit much for some people with the orange. I mean, the stitching is really not that bad, but it is interesting that like the top trim all has orange, kind of an interesting direction for Genesis to go. These are heated and ventilated seats, and the driver's seat only is going to get ergo motion massage. So not really sure why they stiff the passenger on getting that feature, but it is worth mentioning. Now, the interior is going to have some similar upgrades that you may have seen on the G80 and the GV80 models. The main thing that you're going to notice is the screen that was up here and the digital gauge cluster have been replaced by this new 27-inch OLED display. This is all one screen. You can see my drive partner Sofyan Bey over there from Redline Reviews has his phone hooked up. So you can see when you have it on CarPlay, it is going to have this little kind of gap between like kind of the two displays. But if I go back to the Genesis system here, you'll see that it does look more flush. You can have this in a white or a dark theme. This is so modern. Like, these menus look so great. I have a hard time thinking that this is going to age poorly. This just looks so nice. Wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. On the higher trims, we've got a new Bang & Olufsen audio system with 16 speakers that replaces the old Lexicon system. I haven't had much of a chance to listen to it yet, but I do love Bang & Olufsen audio. The digital gauge cluster can be customized here. There's tons of different ways to do so with these different widgets. So right here, you can have it switch from different trips. You can have a map. They've actually changed it now so you can have Apple CarPlay with Apple Maps showing up in here. You can also have Waze show up in there as well, which is pretty cool. So there's so many different ways that you can customize what's on here. Let's see. There's our map. So like there you can see we can have our Waze displayed in there as well. It does create kind of an awkward line between the screens, but honestly, I love the customization. It is just a little bit of time to figure out how it kind of works with the steering wheel, which is, of course, this nice leather with a little bit of perforation. We do, of course, still have some nice physical controls, volume knob and tuning knob with some nice knurling. These are touch capacitive buttons, but they do give you quick access to things without having to use the touchscreen. Climate controls are all going to be touch sensitive, but they are laid out pretty well, and we do have nice knobs that are, again, knurled for the temperature, so quick access to that. We have our drive mode selector here. There is a new terrain mode. You just click that to get to terrain mode. That is new for 2026. And then we do have our normal Eco, Comfort, Sport. Sport Plus is going to be specific to the Sport Prestige model. This is also a knob that you can use to control the screen, so you don't have to use touch. I like that Genesis gives you the option for all of that. And as you can see, we do have carbon fiber here on this top trim. It is a different kind of weave than you would typically see. Little bit more elegant than I think most carbon fiber is. I'm not the biggest fan of carbon fiber in luxury cars, but I do think Genesis has done a nice job on this interior. We do also have a newly located wireless charger. I prefer the placement of this right here. Quick access to your phone, and then everything else is just absolutely gorgeous. We've got leather all the way up on the dash. The top trim level is going to get you this beautiful suede headliner. This feels so much nicer than the last BMW X3 that I was just in. This is arguably the nicest interior in its class. And now let's check out the back seat. We're not going to spend too much time back here. We do have about 37 inches of legroom back here. Not class leading, not terrible either. I fit behind myself just fine. We do have rear sunshades here on this top model, although most GV70s are not going to have that. We do have air vents down here, USBs, and an outlet as well on the top trim. We also have heated seats back here on the upper trim levels, and I love this. This is a feature you used to get on the old Lexus LS, that you could actually move this seat out of your way. Great for rear passengers, great for Ubering. I actually really like that little feature there. And the last thing we'll check out before getting it on the road is the trunk, which is hidden, the button for underneath the windshield wiper there. Got a little over 26 cubic feet of space back here. You can open it up to about 56, I believe. It is kind of a long reach to get to the back seat there, but luckily Genesis puts in these nice pulls. Not a lot of automakers are doing that right now. I love how easy they make it to fold down the rear seats. Not the biggest thing in its segment, but it's definitely not bad either. We don't really have any under the floor storage in here to speak of, but that is just something to consider with the GV70. It's not the most practical car in its class, but it's certainly not bad. All right, now let's get behind the wheel of the 2026 Genesis GV70. We are driving the optional 3.5-liter twin turbocharged V6 engine, which has 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque. It's unchanged from the 2025 GV70. They haven't really upgraded the power here. The base engine is still a 2.5-liter, which is pretty big for a 4-cylinder with just one turbo. That makes 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. Both of those send power out to all-wheel drive standard through an 8-speed automatic transmission. So standard horsepower amongst 4-cylinder engines in this class is pretty much class leading. I mean, there are hybrids and plug-in hybrids that make more than that, but for a standard 4-cylinder, pretty good. This V6 is not necessarily like class leading in terms of power. You do make more power in something like the inline six of a BMW X3 M50 or the hybridized four-cylinder in a Mercedes GLC 43. Now we're driving the Sport Prestige trim with the V6, so we get a lot of other things, special features that are not found on other GV70 models. That includes a Sport Plus mode, and I do really mean a true Sport Plus mode. It's going to make the engine sound a lot louder. It's going to hold the gears longer. As I come down, it's going to blip the throttle with a really nice downshift. I hate it when automakers put in a Sport Plus or a race mode that barely feels any different from the other driving modes, but this really like puts a lot of heft in the steering, the suspension firms up, and the transmission really behaves how I want it to. I don't even feel like I have to use the paddle shifters. In fact, I think Sport Plus mode is a little more aggressive than I would actually want it to be when I'm just kind of driving around normally in traffic. But it's a nice thing to have when the road opens up and the traffic diminishes. This is a true Sport Plus mode, and I do love Genesis for actually including a mode that's this aggressive in what is pretty much a luxury crossover. We also have a limited slip differential here on the top V6 model. We also have something called highway body motion control. It's adaptive suspension that can actually use the camera system to detect, for example, a speed bump, and it'll prime the suspension to be softer before you go over it. It does a great job here on these back roads controlling the car. I don't know if this is quite as good as a Porsche Macan, but it is definitely sportier than something like a Lexus NX, and I actually think this drives a little bit better than the last BMW X3 M50 that I drove. It's a nice balance of the comfort that you want from the Lexus, but also the nice dynamic experience that you should expect from one of the German brands. There's also a new terrain mode here on the GV70. I don't think anybody's ever going to use that. They showed us some B-roll of the car going through gravel. I highly doubt anybody is ever going to use that, but here in a back road, this thing is very entertaining. And now what I'm going to do is we've got a little bit of a straight road here. We do have launch control here on this V6 model, so let's see what 375 horsepower can do. Launch control ready. It's going to build up the revs, and I'm going to let it go. There we go. And there's 60. Pretty flat road. So that was 5.22 seconds. That's really not that quick, if I'm being honest. I think you could definitely do a sub 5 in either the AMG Mercedes or the BMW X3 M50. So in terms of delivering on the horsepower number, this thing could be a little bit more impressive. So if you're looking for like the quickest GV70, I think what you actually might want is the electrified model. So in addition to the 4-cylinder and the V6, you can get an all-electric GV70. There's no hybrid, at least not yet. Genesis does say that one is coming, probably with the same turbo hybrid system that just debuted in the Hyundai Palisade. But if you're ready to go all electric, you'll get, I believe it's like 480 horsepower in boost mode. You're getting a bigger battery for 2026 in that car, 84 kilowatt hours instead of 77. So you'll get better range than you used to get, because that was the big problem with the electrified GV70 before, was the range, but it'll still have really quick charging. And for the first time, it will now have an NACS port instead of a CCS one, meaning you can charge at a Tesla station. All right, so now let's take it out of its sport mode. We're gonna go back into comfort mode. And now it's just a very luxury, comfortable car. We've got really great adaptive driving systems, does really nice with the steering. The adaptive dampers are doing a really nice job soaking up the bumps. The only other complaint that I have with this car is going to be the fuel economy. It doesn't even crack 30 mpg with the 4-cylinder, and this V6 model is even worse. We're averaging like 11 miles per gallon, although I was driving quite spiritedly. You're really only going to get like maybe 22 average in this car with the V6. The V6 is even thirstier than the 4-cylinder, but even if you do get the 4-cylinder, which you'd expect to be a little bit more efficient, it's still less fuel efficient than the 6-cylinder that you get in a BMW X3. I don't really know how Genesis made these engines both so thirsty. Maybe it's because they're a little bit bigger than the other engines in their class. Most people use a 2-liter 4-cylinder or a 3-liter 6-cylinder, so maybe that extra half a liter is part of the reason why they don't get very good fuel economy. But I think when Genesis finally does introduce the hybrid version of the GV70, then they will finally have the best all-rounder it can be, because right now it drives great, it rides great, the interior I think might be the best in the class, but the performance is a little bit lacking, and the fuel economy is definitely one of the worst. So that wraps up our time with the 2026 Genesis GV70. Time to talk about pricing. You can get a 2.5 all-wheel drive. Remember, all GV70s are all-wheel drive now for $47,985. That does not include the destination fee as well, and it can go up really significantly from there as well. The Select trim is just under 51 grand, and then the Advanced trim, which is the one I think I recommend the most. It gets you a leather interior, heated and ventilated seats, a lot of the stuff that you really want to make this feel like a true luxury vehicle. That's going to be $55,435. You can step up to the Sport Prestige if you want your 4-cylinder GV70 to look a little bit more like the one you saw in this video, but that is going to cost you nearly $59,000. Now, if you want the V6, and I'm not so sure the V6 is worth the extra money, that's going to start at $63,415 for the Sport Advanced trim, and this Sport Prestige model is a little over $70,000, which is a lot considering that this isn't like an AMG or an M level of performance to be spending $70,000 on. In my personal opinion, I think $55,000 for the Sport Prestige 2.5 is going to be your best value in the GV70 lineup, but this vehicle has become a lot more expensive since its initial introduction. I think this thing represented an extreme value in the segment where you were getting higher levels of elegance and luxury with a really nice driving experience for less money than the Germans, and now Genesis thinks that their sales are at a point where they can kind of charge competitive prices. So the value has kind of diminished a little bit, but you do still get what I believe is a more elegant interior and exterior compared to a lot of the other vehicles in this segment. So if that's what you're looking for, I think this is still a good option. I'm interested to drive the electrified model, which we did not have an opportunity to drive here at this event. And I'm really hoping that Genesis introduces a hybrid model as soon as possible using that new hybrid powertrain that they revealed in the Palisade, because I think that is the other thing that is really missing on this GV70 to make it a complete package, would be better fuel economy. But let me know in the comments, would you buy this over something like a BMW X3 or a Lexus NX? Let me know in the comments, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get alerted when our new videos come out. I'll see you next time.